There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie! We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody!
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in! We're gonna start right here!
And we are going to start right here. Hello, and welcome to a Radulich and Broadcasting Network premiere podcast triple feature, where we bring you the old, the new, the used, and the blue from the world of streaming movies. We are celebrating Black History Month here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, as we do every year. And joining me on the journey through Black cinema, again, old, new, used, and blue, is the one and only old, new, used, and blue, Jason Teasley. How do you do, sir?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Yeah, very interested in this conversation we're going to have tonight. In the retrospect of Spike Lee.
That's what we're doing here. We are looking at 3 of Spike Lee's many films. I picked 2. Jason picked 1, which is why we're not doing Bamboozled, much to my chagrin and constant whining. But we are doing, I think, one of his seminal pictures in Do the Right Thing. We're doing a very important, I think, picture, a biopic that he did starring Denzel Washington on Malcom X, which I think is a very important film. And because Jason hates me, Oldboy, which is a remake of a Korean film that apparently is much better than this.
Why do you think I hate you? I specifically chose this movie for one specific reason.
And that specific reason was what exactly?
Because you are a mental health professional. It's the Stockholm. It's basically the Stockholm syndrome. The sin into madness is what happens over 20 years, and of course the twist ending.
I will say this, and I don't want to get too far ahead because we are going to start with Do the Right Thing tonight, because I can't wait to talk about that movie. It's definitely in my top 20 films of all time. I just adore Do the Right Thing. I think it's amazing. But I will tell you the one thing that came out of my viewing of Oldboy, the one thing that I've sort of held on to and made it a worthwhile viewing experience. It did support my slash fiction fantasy of being in the room when Thanos bangs Scarlet Witch.
Yes, I mean, and you know, this is where the entire MCU actually got created.
That's the headcanon I'm going with. All right, so let's talk about Do the Right Thing here. Before I had when we put together the roster of films we were going to look at for Black History Month, and you and I said, hey, why don't we look at a director? And we both decided that Spike Lee should be the first time I think we've ever just focused on a director for one of these, either a Long Road to Ruin or a triple feature. Point being, I immediately was like, yeah, we have to talk about Do the Right Thing. It's like the Spike Lee film. Didn't quite launch him, but I think it's the one that he was most known for at the beginning of his career. Had you ever seen it before?
No, that's why when we talked about this, you know, we bantered back and forth, and Do the Right Thing was the quintessential Spike Lee movie that he's probably most known for to launch his career. I don't think he had anything really before this.
He did. But nobody knows what it is. That's why that every time like the subject of Spike Lee comes up, everybody says the same thing. They're like, isn't Do the Right Thing his first movie? No, his first movie is She's Gotta Have It, which came out in 1986, followed by School Days, which was in 1988, and then Do the Right Thing came out in 1989. Early on in his career, he did Mo Better Blues, which people know about, Jungle Fever, Malcom X, Crooklyn, Clockers. Nobody saw, except I might be the only person on earth who saw Get on the Bus. People know he got game because of the soundtrack. And then
excellent movie.
Yeah, excellent movie. And then in the latter half, getting into the 2000s, he did Summer of Sam, which I think people know about. Bamboozled, I think people have seen, but not a lot of people know. 25th Hour, I think everybody has seen that one. That's the one with Ed Norton before he goes to prison. I vaguely remember She Hate Me. I don't remember Inside Man at all, or Miracle of St. Anna.
Inside Man's a solid movie.
Then he did, getting into the 2010s, he did Red Hook Summer, Oldboy, which we're going to talk about tonight, The Sweet Blood of Jesus, 2014. Yeah. Chirac. And then in 2018, he did 2 movies, one of which I've never heard of before. The other one I saw in the theater, Passover and Black Klansman. Did you get a chance to see Black Klansman when it came out?
I have not. It's on my recording. It came across HBO.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it today, and I put it to record because it's got a great premise, and I remember you guys covering it, and I didn't listen to the review because it was on my queue to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't listened to that review yet till I watch the movie, but it is on my queue on the DVR.
And then lastly, in 2020 for Netflix, he did The Five Bloods, which is on my list to watch eventually. So that's Spike Lee. But getting back to what initially got me down that rabbit hole was, he did 2 movies before Do the Right Thing, but that's the one everybody knows and they think it's his first film. So what is Do the Right Thing? Do the Right Thing came out in 1989. It's known mostly because of the Public Enemy song Fight the Power that's associated with it. That's actually in the movie. The film was a critical and commercial success and received numerous accolades, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor for Danny Aiello's portrayal of Sal, the pizzeria owner. It is often listed among the greatest films of all time. Take that, Pat Mullen.
I'm going to disagree there.
You're all wrong. Damn white people and your lack of film knowledge. In 1999, the film was deemed culturally, Jason Teasley, culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and was selected, don't you understand, for preservation in the National Film Registry. Who are you, Jason Teasley, to argue with the Library of Congress and the National Film Registry? How dare you?
Based on, the last 20-some years, I've got half a brain, so that makes me more qualified more than the government of the United States. So, we could go there.
Sure. All right. All kidding aside, so this once again stars Spike Lee in the title role as Mookie, Danny Aiello as Sal, Ozzie Davis as Damea, Ruby Dee as Mother Sister. I love the names in this. This is my heart, Jason Teasley. This is 1989. I was still living in the black neighborhood of in the suburbs of New York City. This is my shit, man. Do the Right Thing is my shit.
And we'll get into this a little bit more. 90% of this movie, I was okay with. 10% of the movie,
not so much.
Ruined everything for me, and we'll go in. We'll explore that. But this caught the essence of the 80s and early 90s urban culture.
Giancarlo Esposito, who's in like everything now, plays a young, brash bugging out, who is Jason Teasley's favorite character in this movie.
Well, I mean, he did become successful. He started selling meth out of chicken restaurants.
Another one that you've seen in a whole bunch of different things is Bill Nunn as Radio Raheem, who has the best line of this entire movie. Because you see, Jason Teasley, first comes love, then hate, but then love comes back with a left hook, and then
well, Radio Raheem, and spoiler alert. So I won't give you about 10 seconds here. He does not really die. He goes on to a prominent news career, and he is still in New York. He becomes successful. He works at the Daily Bugle. And, he works for J. Jonah Jameson. And if you don't believe me, go watch the Raimi verse of Spider-Man.
John Turturro plays Pino. Richard Edson as Vito. Roger Guinevere Smith as Smiley. Rosie Perez, I think this introduced her into the film world, as Tina. Joy Lee as Jade. Steve White as Ahmad. A young Martin Lawrence before he went plumb crazy and then got fat, plays C. Leonard L. Thomas as Punchy. And then we have a Robin Harris with the best.
Oh my God!
Robin Harris with the best name in this entire cast is Sweet Dick Willie.
Yes, he was actually one of my favorite comedians.
Yeah, Robin Harris is the shit.
Bebe's Kids. Bebe's Kids is one of my most iconic. That and Goonie Goo Goo by Eddie Murphy and the Ice Cream Man. Those are probably my 3 favorite comedy bits of growing up.
Do you not understand what's going on with Bebe's kids? They don't die, Jason Teasley.
They multiply.
That is correct, sir. You're legit.
Yeah, I'm too legit to quit. Hey.
And then rounding out the cast here, we have Paul Benjamin as ML, Frankie Faison from The Wire as Coconut Sid, Samuel Jackson from Everything as Mr. Senior Love, who I forgot was even in this. Steve Park, Rick Aiello, Miguel Sandoval, Luis Antonio Ramos, John Savage, Frank Vincent, Richard Parnell, Habersham, and then Nicholas Turturro as an uncredited extra. All right, so you didn't love it. Pat doesn't love it. I think it's the best thing ever. Most people have probably, who are going to watch this video, probably either don't remember it or never saw it and don't know what the hell we're talking about. So what are we talking about? We're talking about 25-year-old Mookie, who lives in Bed-Stuy with his sister Jade, has a toddler son named Hector, and a girlfriend named Tina. And he works as a delivery boy at the local pizzeria that has been owned and operated for 25 years by Sal, an Italian American who lives in another New York neighborhood. Sal's racist eldest son, Pino, is antagonistic, to say the least, towards Mookie, clashing with both his father, who refuses to move his business out of the majority African-American neighborhood, and his younger brother, Vito, who is friendly with Mookie. Many distinctive residents are introduced, including drunk Damea, Mother Sister, who watches the neighborhood from her brownstone, Radio Raheem, who blasts Public Enemy's Fight the Power in his boombox on a loop, Smiley, a mentally disabled man who meanders around the neighborhood trying to sell hand-colored pictures of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. At Sal's, Mookie and friend Buggin' Out, great name, questions Sal about his wall of fame decorated with photos of famous Italian Americans and demands that Sal put up pictures of black celebrities since the pizzeria is in a black neighborhood. Sal replies that it's his business and he'll do whatever the hell he wants. Buggin' Out attempts to start a boycott of the pizzeria, poorly. During the day, just run up to people and say, I'm just going to a rant about what you're boycotting. That works every time. During the day, local teenagers open a fire hydrant and douse the other neighbors to beat the heat wave before officers Mark Ponte and Gary Long intervene. After a phone call, Mookie and Pino debate race, like you do. Mookie confronts Pino about his contempt towards African Americans, although Pino's favorite celebrities are black. They're not Mookie's kind of black. They're like good black. That's what John Turturro tells us. Various characters express racial insults. It's the best part of the movie. Mookie against Italians, Pino against African Americans, Latino Stevie against Koreans, white officer Gary Long against Puerto Ricans, and Korean store owner Sonny against Jews, because everyone's got to take a kick in the pants. Pino expresses his hatred for African Americans to Sal, who insists on staying in the neighborhood. That night, Buggin' Out and Radio Raheem and Smiley march into Sal's and demand that Sal change the wall of fame. Sal demands that Radio Raheem turn his boombox off, but he refuses. Buggin' Out calls Sal and Sons guinea bastards and threatens to shutter the pizzeria until they change the wall of fame. A frustrated Sal calls Buggin' Out a racial slur used for black people that they use commonly to address each other in saying hello, and destroys Raheem's boombox with a bat like you do. Raheem attacks Sal, igniting a fight that spills out into the street and tracks the crowd. While Raheem is choking Sal, the police arrive, break up the fight, and apprehend Raheem and Buggin' Out like you do. Despite the pleas of his partner Ponte and onlookers, Long tightens his chokehold on Raheem, killing him. Realizing their error, the officers place the body in the back of the police car and
like you do,
and scoot off into the night. On the onlookers, devastated and enraged as they should be about Radio Raheem's death, blame Sal and his sons. Damea tries to convince the crowd that Sal did not cause his death, but the crowd remains stationary. Mookie grabs a trash can and throws it through the window of Sal's pizzeria, sparking the crowd to rush in and destroy the pizzeria because he has all he can stand and he can't stand no more. Smiley sets the building on fire, and Damea pulls Sal and Sons away from the mob, which turns towards Sonny's store, preparing to destroy it too. However, a panicked Sonny eventually dissuades the group. The police return to the site along with the firemen and riot patrols to extinguish the fire and disperse the crowd. After they issue a warning, the firefighters turn their hoses on the rioters, leading to more fighting and arrests, while Mookie and Jade watch bewilderedly from the curb. Smiley wanders back into the smoldering building and hangs out one of his pictures on the remnants of Sal's Wall of Fame. The next day, after arguing with Tina, Mookie returns to Sal. He feels that Mookie has betrayed him, but Mookie demands his weekly pay. You're going to talk about people speaking the same language and not hearing each other. That's that scene.
Yeah.
The two men argue and cautiously reconcile, and Sal finally pays Mookie. Local DJ Mr. Senor Love Daddy dedicates a song to Radio Raheem. Before the credits, two quotations expressing different views about violence, one by Martin Luther King and one by Malcolm X appear, followed by a photograph of both leaders shaking hands. Lee then dedicates the film to the families of the 6 victims of brutality of racial violence: Eleanor Bumpers, Michael Griffith, Arthur Miller Jr., Edmund Perry, Yvonne Smallwood, and Michael Stewart. All right, Jason, I read the plot. I talked a little bit about my my love of this movie, and I will gush about it momentarily. But you first, tell me what your problem is, sir. Why do you hate this movie and everybody in it?
Well, no, I think the cast is outstanding. Me and you, like I said, off the air, me and you had a little bit of discussions through our group chat, and we were just going over the accolades of this cast, and like, you know, just seeing them like in their formidable years before they exploded on the scenes and got iconic girls and stuff. To go back and look at this was really interesting. You know, watching it. You know, you get that. I know him from somewhere, and then of course you're on the IMDb, look it up and like, wow. But this movie, it had a lot of good points. Like I said, 90% of the movie, it was good. It shows an everyday life in a multicultural neighborhood, the racial tensions and stuff that are always there, that he kind of uses a catalyst to turn the tensions up. But this goes back, and this plays a lot into today's culture in 2022.
Still relevant.
You have a small one person offended that wants to change something that of somebody else's business, and they go in and demand it to be done, and don't realize that you can't tell me what to do in my own business. Go fuck off. And that's the spark. The other thing is the police brutality, the police relations that you still see was really on a back burner for most of the movie. You see the glimpses of it. You see what you can kind of narrate what's going to happen with the riot, but it still kind of catches you off guard. When it actually happens, you don't expect a body just to be, you know, somebody's life to be snuffed out, then them throwing in the back of the car and just drove away. That's not how stuff happens, but it conveys the point of that, you know, police brutality is a relative thing. It's been there for, you know, damn near 30 years plus.
No, longer than that.
Yeah, I'm saying it's been there 30 years plus. You see the racial tensions in neighborhoods in New York and the boroughs and everything, and it kind of shows a light on that. And the ending of this movie really left a bitter taste in my mouth, because you see the rioting, you see that this has been a cornerstone of the neighborhood for 25 years. Everybody talks about when Bugging Out's going, trying to get everybody to rally against it, to boycott it. Everybody has such nice words. We're not going to get this.
Well, they're apathetic towards his point. His thing is he's coming from he represents black nationalism, and the rest of the neighborhood doesn't give a shit about that.
Right. Well, and you know, he's been a cornerstone, and you've got this young, upcoming activist, we'll call him, that wants to change everything, wants to be a martyr. When in reality, he's the mouthpiece while everybody else takes the fall for everything and deals with the consequences of what he's created. And that's where you see Radio Raheem, because throughout the movie, Radio Raheem is a staple of the neighborhood. Everybody knows him. and he doesn't have like any antagonist. You know, it's kind of like Smiley. He's a part of the neighborhood, but he kind of blends in with everybody.
He's one of the weirdos that walks around the neighborhood. You know, you get the sense from Radio Raheem that he's, I don't know how quite to say this, but
he's not mentally capable.
Yeah, he comes across a little spectrumy.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was Spike Lee's intention or not, but he's definitely like, there's definitely some sort of like deep-seated anxiety or something else going on, because he walks around, and I say that, and it's not expressly stated in the film. There's a lot of subtext here, and I'm not entirely sure what Spike Lee thought he was going for, but my impression was that Radio Raheem was one of these guys that whatever is going on with him, he copes by walking around, you know, playing the same song over and over and over again, which is definitely, you know, evidence of some sort of mental health issue going on. And, you know, the one monologue he gets, and I make fun of it because it's so goofy to me, but if you listen to what he's trying to say, he is expressing ideas that he's feeling, and he's doing so in the only language that he knows. He's talking about it in terms of violence. You know, the whole scene there is he's got love and hate rings on his hands, and all he's basically saying is that, you know, as love progresses, hate comes to meet it and pushes it back, and then love comes back and hate, but you know, and so that's all he's really saying. It's a lot of nothing really, but to him it's meaningful. But to your point, the neighborhood is filled with people who are living their lives apathetic or some combination of that, and the only one who, you know, it's like the college kid. You know, they leave home, they go to college, they learn stuff that's different from the way they grew up in their own neighborhood for the very first time, and suddenly that's their new religion, and they got to go home and tell everyone about it. That's bugging out. And I wanted to let you finish, but this has been bugging me since, coincidentally, this has been bugging me since I watched the film, and I'm not sure who am I to argue with the Library of Congress, but hold on, I do think the film's got some interesting flaws to it, and this is one of them, because bugging out, you don't know anything about him. You see from his clothing and the leather necklace that he's got on that has Africa on it that he's clearly, like, you know, the black nationalist of the neighborhood. And he does say, and he has a conversation with Mookie, I think, before he goes to get a pizza, you know, about stay black and all of that, the kind of thing you would say in that neighborhood if you're that kind of person. And then he goes into the pizza place, he's eating his pizza, and he looks on the wall as if it's the first time he's ever been in the pizza joint. Yeah. And I had a problem with that, because what Spike Lee wants to say to us is that he's just now noticing for the first time there are no black people on that wall. I don't believe that's possible. He's a young fella, but he's not that young. He has to have been in that pizza place before. He has to have noticed there are no black people on the wall. And if you're trying to tell me that he's had some sort of come to Jesus where now he thinks black people should be represented in every store and every corner of this neighborhood where black people live, I needed more on bugging out to get me there. Not just him having an epiphany in the middle of the pizza place for the very first time.
Yeah, I mean, if it would have been like they would have introduced him as a character that came back into the neighborhood after being off, right? Then, you know, you could have got to that point a little bit.
Where have you been? You know, hey man, you're back in the neighborhood. Where have you been? Oh, I was at Brown University or something, or Temple University, and I've been learning about all the black people ever in history. You know, okay, I'll see you around. And then he walks in, and he was, you know, and maybe even says like, you know, Sal, I've never noticed before now that there are no black people on this wall. It's one of the, I think, the flaws in Spike Lee's writing. I think that he jumps to a lot of conclusions. He obviously has a point of view and something that has a burning desire to share with the world, and he doesn't, and he just says it like the way. Sometimes I think like Spike Lee's actual character in this isn't Mookie. Spike Lee's actual character is bugging out. And bugging out is just running through the streets, yelling in your face things that he is thinking that is deeply meaningful to him. And you're like, could you start at the beginning, George Lucas, and not in the middle of this rant? Because like I don't know what you're talking about. And he loses everybody instantly. And boy, is that Spike Lee a lot of times.
Yeah, and that was one of the points I was going to make, because watching this movie and knowing Spike Lee's career and his antics, you see that he is bugging out. This is bugging out is Spike Lee. It's his personality, but it's also kind of the yin yang that we was talking about, the love hate. Mookie is who Spike Lee used to be. Bugging out is who Spike Lee is as a filmmaker, and that's where I got that. Now, the like I said, the major issue is the very last 10-15 minutes of the movie is in front of after Sal's is burnt down, and they're just having this conversation and it's, you don't see the animosity that's really there. It's like he's trying to get a point across. You don't see the animosity. You don't see they're speaking but not communicating. They're just speaking to hear the other one, hear themselves speak, basically, because they have no way of getting their point across and seeing everything, and that's one thing that really soured. I mean, you could have took that, and of course, we're looking at this through a 2022 lens, not a 1989 lens. Sure. So yeah, we're going to see things a little different. But you could see in that moment that if you just had you amped up the tension a little bit between them, and not just have him wake up and go, I need to go get paid, and just have a casual conversation.
Yeah.
That kind of ruined the entire movie for me. I
feel like it rings true though. That is how people talk to each other. You know, we can see today in the discourse online, and I think you see it in your life around you, that people don't listen to each other. People just talk. They don't talk to each other. We're talking with each other right now. We're having a discourse. But I think in many cases throughout your personal life and maybe even your professional life, you see people that are just talking to be heard or waiting for their chance to speak and not really listening to what the other person is saying. There's not a discourse happening. There's not a give and take. There is either people, as I said, just waiting for the other person to stop talking so that they can talk to them, because all they care about is being heard. You know, every conversation is an opportunity to be on a soapbox, you know, to be heard because whatever their mental health reasons are, you know, or they're just talking at you, and it's not even so much like they're either talking over you or at you because they don't really care what you have to say or how you feel or what you're thinking. They just are compelled to talk. It's one of the most frustrating things about being in the mental health field for me is seeing just how many people don't really care what anyone else has to say or think. It's and these are also the same people who may be using their mouth a lot but saying very, very little of substance. And so when I look at Mookie and Sal at the end of the movie, after Mookie has thrown a trash can through the window and caused everybody else to burn the place to the ground, it very much feels like two people who may be physically in the same space, but they're on two different planes of reality, and they're just talking, and neither one is listening. And is that not emblematic of many of the race issues we have, at least in this country, is that everyone's talking at each other and nobody's listening?
And that brings me to my point. This is the best advice someone ever gave me. And it's, you need to speak to listen, not to reply.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of communication errors we have, because a lot of times you get into a conversation of differing opinions and you talk at each other, not to each other.
Yeah.
You waiting for that moment to, okay, well, here's my point. I am push your. Now, the issue I have with this, the main issue is, like I said, you could have a rewrite that we mentioned, a 5-minute scene could have fixed this for me, and and it progressed a little bit further. But the fact that yes, you're in a predominantly black neighborhood, you have and you see the animosity toward the Korean store that opened up because they said, well, I've been here all my life. They've been off the quote unquote off the boat for less than a year, and they've already got their own business. Where are we going to get ours? But it's three older black gentlemen sitting there bitching and complaining, and that's their life. That's all they do all day.
And the implication is that they're drinking. Like, you don't ever see it. It's a weird movie because Like, I don't remember what this is rated. It's probably rated R because you see what's her face's boobs in it. But thank God for the nipple.
Chocolate titties, as the big man says.
Yes. But weirdly enough, no drugs. Like, it is implied in the subtext that Martin Lawrence's group of guys is probably drug dealers. Radio Raheem might be a drug dealer. Demare is obviously a drunk, but the only time you ever see him drink anything is in a paper bag. You never actually see him handle liquor. And then the three old guys, just, Robin Harris, Frankie Faison, and I can't remember the other guy's name, are, when they're out just sitting against the wall, jibber jabbering all day. The implication is that they're old drunks too.
Yeah. And you see that in neighborhoods. You see that in all neighborhoods. You see that, you see those nosy neighbors, as Sister Mother is.
Mm-hmm.
You see the band of misfits, which is Martin Lawrence and his group.
Mm-hmm.
You see the staples, that the oddities per se, in Radio Raheem and Smiley, and then you see what holds everything together.
Yeah,
which is pretty much Samuel L. Jackson's radio station.
I want you to get to your point about what specifically what the exact thing that bugs you about this is, because then I want to go back to what Spike Lee is trying to say about black people in that neighborhood, in their frustration with the Korean grocer. So go ahead. Yeah,
well, I mean, we've already covered it. It's the end, the last 10 minutes, the dialogue at the end, that it's how there is no tension there. It's just them having this really.
You didn't think there was dramatic. You didn't think there was dramatic tension between Sal and Mookie?
No, it did come across that to me because there was no. On Sal, it was his anger stemmed from Mookie coming to get money.
Mm-hmm.
Mookie's anger came from not getting the money. There was, I mean, it was not the tension from, look, without your spark, without you instigating this, my restaurant would still be here. You would still have a job. You could still provide for your family. Now, because of your actions, not only are you not able to provide for your family, you took a business out of the neighborhood, a cornerstone business out of the neighborhood,
a thriving business.
Yes.
Sal makes a point of saying that's like the best day they've had in weeks.
And, you don't see the tension of the repercussions. You see it's focused solely on him getting paid or not getting paid. Mm-hmm. That's where the tension comes from, not the repercussions of, you fucked this up for everybody because of your choice to ignite a riot.
And Mookie doesn't express any
remorse,
dissatisfaction or remorse or anything else. He's just like, I'm owed money. I'm really not interested in you, your fairy story. And the thing of it is, what he's reacting to the cops killing Radio Raheem, which he's kind of like back. It's all subtext. It's all in Spike Lee's performance. None of this is dialogue. None of this is said. He's you see him sitting on the stoop. You see him looking around, and he's kind of going back through the events of how this got here, and in a way that is very common for people, utterly absolves Radio Raheem and bugging out of any guilt in what led to ultimately the cops killing Radio Raheem. It doesn't matter that all Sal asked for Radio Raheem was to turn the damn radio off or turn it down, and he wouldn't do it. They're screaming at Sal over the bar, change the pictures, listen to us. They're basically throwing a tantrum.
Yes.
And Sal, who's at the end of a hot, long day, has just lost his patience utterly. And he's now screaming back, and no one's listening to each other. It's just screaming. And finally, Sal, in a fit of rage, makes a poor choice and destroys the radio because he wanted it turned down, which they wouldn't do. And because it's his prized possession, Radio Raheem starts strangling Sal, and they roll outside. And then the cops come, and the cops do what in some cases happens. They use excessive force, and the kid dies. And so Spike Lee's running back through all of that and coming to basically the conclusion, Had you just changed the damn pictures like bugging out ass 12 hours ago, we'd still have an alive black guy in this neighborhood, and throws the trash can through the window. At which point everybody else is already angry about Radio Raheem's death and isn't really putting a lot of thought into it. They just see dead kid, goes and trashes the place, and is just, but that takes it back to what I wanted to talk about, which is the frustration that I think Black people do talk about and it comes out in the conversation about the Korean grocer, like we have this all Black neighborhood and we have two very successful businesses not owned by Black people. What is wrong with us? But they don't, but there's a cognitive dissonance and and not wanting to own up for your own mistakes and misfortunes and bad choices. And so it's a projection onto other people. You use the phrase, when are we going to get ours? Because it's said in the movie. As if, by the simple virtue of being Black and having suffered for generations, we should be given successful businesses is the belief of some. And then they're resentful when people come in and do it. And it's like, what, the subtext, what's underneath all of that is this feeling of inadequacy in the Black culture of like, why can't we get our crap together? And then it gets, and what Spike Lee is saying is that a lot of the stuff gets expressed through racism and violence, but really what it is self-loathing and a self-consciousness, a dissatisfaction of self. And then if you go back even further, it's probably a lot of generational trauma. You have to remember, this place takes movie in 1989, several decades after several decades of people coming back from Vietnam and Korea and World War II, and there's generational substance abuse, there's alcoholism, there's PTSD. A lot of this stuff is not dealt with directly or even known by name. But it affects the Black community. It affects a lot of communities, not just the Black one. But because we're talking Do the Right Thing, I'm focusing on that. It affects a large portion of a lot of impoverished Black communities. And because nobody has the language, the insight, the intelligence, or anything else to express those things in a positive way, it just comes out in one negative thing after another. It comes out, again, in racism. It comes out in violence. It comes out in prejudice. And that's what Spike Lee is talking about in Do the Right Thing. All joking aside, I don't care that you and Pat don't like it. You don't have to like it. No one says you do.
And that's the point.
I don't hold that against you. I like the movie, but more importantly, I like the point of view that Spike Lee is taking. I like that he's looking at relationships, interactions, generational dissatisfaction, racism, and he's looking at it from the point of view of somebody living through it and living in that community and hearing the Demers and the Mother Sisters of the world and the Radio Raheem. These are people that have probably been in his life to some degree or another. And he's using this movie as a window into that world. And that's why I love it so much. It's not perfect. It's flawed. We talked about some of the flaws in it. There are. I wish Spike Lee sometimes would slow down and remember that you have to speak to the audience, not at them, which is a big problem with a lot of his movies. Is he definitely gets a bit hoity. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
Do you think Spike Lee can be a bit hoity?
Yes. Yes,
a little high and mighty at times. Like I'm so smart and I know so much better than you. Hang on. Let's not be completely, patronizing of the people that have paid good money to come see your flick.
Yeah, and in closing, I'm just going to say it's okay not to have different opinions. That's one reason why we do this podcast. So we have these discussions is because you're very high on this movie. Mm-hmm. I am not. We discuss it. We have the intellectual conversation, and we could go away from this and still have intellectual conversations because we don't like the same thing. And I think that's a lot of society today is if you don't like what I like, you're a bad person. And it's funny.
I did a page because it never got put up on the W2M page, W2Mnet.com, where all of our podcasts can be found. There was a 2 to 3 year period where the people working on the page didn't put up pages for a lot of my podcasts, one of which was a show that Ronnie, Alexis, Jesse, and Robert and I did about toxic fandoms. And that was a big, listening back to it, that was a big part of the conversation, was the feeling like an attack on an IP that you like is an attack on a person.
You
and
personally,
boy, and then boy, is that not the case. But that is a big part of our culture right now. I am the IP. I am Star Wars. I am Marvel. I am DC. And if you do not like Marvel, you do not like me. And if you do not like me, then I hate you. And it's like, hang on, back that train all the way up.
Right. And, you know, people having different opinions, whether it be, you know, an IP, political, or anything, they take it as personal attacks. And because nowadays, for some reason, people have lost their self-identity and only identify with the
IP or whatever,
the cultural icons that they associate themselves with.
It becomes their. We said this recently on Damn You Hollywood. The fact that you like something doesn't absolve you of criticism. Your personality should not be the thing you like. You should have your own personality that, you know, and then like things on top of that. I want one last question, and then I promise we'll move on from this, because I honestly could talk about this movie for another hour. So I'm going to control myself and not do that. This is a talky movie. There's almost no action in this thing. I mean, it crescendos in violence, but up to that point, it's just people walking back and forth across the same street for an hour and a half. Is it this, you just don't like that kind of movie? Or
no, I had no problem with that. Like I said, I mean, up till the thing, the confrontation, you know,
so up till when Mookie confronts Sal about being paid while standing in front of the burned wreckage of his pizza place.
Well, the night before, when, you know, you bust in after closing.
So the whole third act throws the movie off for you. Okay.
Yeah, because it's throwing a tantrum because a business owner isn't giving into your demands. That's where it kind of went off the rails for me.
Did you feel like it just wasn't? Well, that's what I'm trying to ascertain. Did you feel like the third act just stretches credulity and it's not believable, or are you just like, this is icky, I don't like it?
It's, I guess it's just my personality. I don't, as a business owner, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Okay. You don't need to cater to one person's demand.
I see what you're saying. So the film takes the side of bugging out and Radio Raheem and ultimately Mookie, and you're like, no. You're on the wrong side, film. You should be on Sal's side.
Yes and no. I think that the way it was portrayed was
as if like Sal had done something wrong when he didn't.
Right. The defiance of giving in to bugging out is like this, like ascertain, like unapologetic thing. When it's, you know, you should be able to do what you want to do with your business because it's your business. You're the one that.
If we had Spike Lee on this podcast right now, you're telling him, like, you know, Spike, we understand.
I would tell Spike Lee to go fuck himself.
And on that note, you know, we talked a lot about the script, Jason, as we discussed acclaimed writer-director Spike Lee on this Black History Month, that maybe his Do the Right Thing script might have needed into the past through editing. You know what else it might have needed?
Grammarly.com.
It certainly would have, Ollie. For you listeners of Triple Feature, Grammarly is offering you free download of the Grammarly software, which could have helped Spike Lee formulate a more coherent script. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively, Spike Lee. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web, Spike Lee. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting a different third act for your movie, Spike Lee. Also, style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2M network to download Grammarly for free. All right, folks, plugs. No, just kidding. The next movie, the next movie Jason's going to make me discuss is a remake of a Korean film of note that came out in 2003. This is a 2013 film directed by Spike Lee called Oldboy, which is a neo-noir action thriller It was written by Mark
Radulich.
Shut up. It is an official remake or labeled by Lee as a reinterpretation of the Park Chan-wook's 2003 film of the same name. It stars Thanos, Scarlet Witch, Josh Brolin, Elizabeth Olsen, Michael Imperioli, Samuel Jackson making his second appearance on this triple feature, and Sharlto Copley. It had a $30 million budget and bombed horribly. It has a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it made Robert Winfrey cry. So, so I didn't love this movie, Jason. Why are we talking about Oldboy and not Bamboozled?
Like I said, I mean, at the top of the show, I wanted your take as a mental health professional to get a retrospect and your insights on the effects of basically having someone that's kidnapped, basically put into Stockholm syndrome, drove into madness, released out into the world, and then having their life turned upside down.
Do you like this movie?
Yes, I do.
Why? Why do you like this?
Well,
why do you like this wretched picture?
We're getting there.
Okay.
You asked me why I had you review it.
Okay. I hear you, but I'm fascinated that you're like. Okay, here's the thing. I'm gonna let you finish, but I need to say this up front.
Okay, Kanye.
This was an unpleasant viewing experience for me. Like, there were certain things that were fun, you know, the violent fight scene with the hammer, which apparently inspired a whole lot of copycats. Is definitely an interesting watch, as stupid as it is. But when it was over, I don't necessarily have like a lot of viscerally negative reactions to a lot of what I watch. I get if I'm watching something that's gross, it's going to be gross, and so I don't react necessarily viscerally. I might not like it, but I don't come away feeling less. I don't come away feeling bad about myself as a person when it's over. I needed a moment when this was over. I was like, oh, this doesn't make me feel good at all. And I will not call this person out. I will not call this person out by name, but I did not know what I was getting into when I saw it. And so when it was over and my reaction was, this was unpleasant, and the reaction I got back was, well, it wasn't supposed to be a happy movie. I didn't know what it was. And I'm sorry for having feelings that were, and I felt bad when it was over. Excuse the fuck out of me. Anyway.
And this movie, and that's why I wanted you to review this movie, is because this is something I know that's completely out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That is, I wanted you to have a visceral reaction because you are a very empathetic person. Over the many years I've known you, you're a very empathetic person. So I wanted you to review this movie because of your empathetic person, your professional background, and just to get your take on how fucked up this movie is. And of course, the twist ending that you find out that is just totally is like, what the fuck? Because I watched
very Chinatown-esque. Have you ever seen Chinatown?
No, I watched this with Amber.
Okay.
And Amber was intent, and she was into it. And then when it ends, she just looks at me and goes, "What the fuck did we watch?" And that's the kind of reaction that I want out of this movie. You ask why I like it, because one, of the over-the-top violence. I like that. Two is because this movie is meant to make you feel uncomfortable. Yep. Very uncomfortable.
Okay.
And it's not a cinematic masterpiece. It's not supposed to be. It is a movie to make you feel uncomfortable, because you go through this in a facade of this revenge tale, and then you find out the twist, and you're like, I feel dirty. I feel really dirty. I feel unclean. I feel like I need to go take a shower to get the filth off of me over what I watched. And as we talked, we're pro wrestling fans. Controversies equals, there's no bad publicity. This movie, and that's why this is one of the movies that are outliers, because this movie has such a visceral reaction. Nobody went to see it because the ending was spoiled.
Okay.
that was one of the main reasons why this movie bombed, because the ending was spoiled, especially in the Korean. And the Korean, we talked in the chat. The Korean version has a really uncomfortable octopus scene that you would have been noped out on and cussing me through the private chat. But this movie it's one of those movies going into it, if you don't know nothing about it like you did, I wanted your honest reaction.
Okay.
Because one, Spike Lee's niche of filming. This is when remake of Korean films was a big deal. And Spike Lee had to be relevant again. So that he remakes one of the more popular Korean movies that nobody in the Western world had seen. So when he done this, he did it I'm not going to say poorly. He did do it justice. And that's the take I want to get on you. We don't always review the best movies. There's sometimes I'm looking at you, Santa Jaws. But we do review movies to get reactions out of each other. I'm looking at you, Nerdland. So I want your honest take. Once you finish this movie, how many times did you cuss me?
All right, let's quick whip through the plot here so we can talk about it. It's a fairly lengthy plot. In 1993, alcoholic advertising executive Joe Doucette gets drunk after losing a major account because he insulted his client's girlfriend. Before he passes out, he sees a woman with a yellow umbrella selling souvenirs on the street. When he wakes up, he finds himself locked in what appears to be a hotel room. All he can see is a poster of a bellhop on the wall, a shower that releases steam, and a TV show. And a TV showing the news and occasionally fitness videos. His unseen captors provide him food, alcohol, and personal hygiene items, but do not explain why he is held captive. Joe sees a news report saying his ex-wife Donna has been raped and murdered, and that he is the prime suspect. Their 3-year-old daughter Maya was adopted through the welfare system and is now a cello prodigy. Over the next 20 years, Joe quits drinking and gets into shape, intent on escaping and getting revenge. He compiles a list of all those who might want to imprison him and writes letters to eventually be given to Maya. One day, he sees a TV interview of Maya who says she would forgive her father if she ever saw him. Joe is drugged shortly thereafter. When he wakes up, he is outside in a trunk in a field with a cell phone and a small amount of money. He spots the woman with the yellow umbrella and runs after her. He loses her but encounters Marie Sebastian, played by Elizabeth Olsen, a nurse who offers to help. He refuses to help but takes her business card. Joe goes to his friend Chucky's bar and explains what has happened to him. While being there, Joe receives a call on his cell phone from a man calling himself the Stranger, who mocks him. After failing to identify the caller, Joe collapses from dehydration, and Chucky calls Marie to help. While he recovers, Marie is moved emotionally by Joe's letters to Maya and offers to help him further. She helps him identify a Chinese restaurant which supplied his food while he was held captive. Joe follows a delivery from the restaurant to the warehouse where he was being imprisoned and meets Cheney, who is played by Samuel L. Jackson. Its owner, Joe, tortures Cheney by flaying his neck with a utility knife, and he confesses that the stranger arranged for Joe's captivity. Upon returning to Chucky's bar, Joe finds the stranger, who is Charles Copley, there with a woman with the yellow umbrella. His bodyguard, Hyung Bak. The stranger says they have kidnapped Maya, but if Joe can determine in 46 hours the stranger's identity and the reason for his captivity for 20 years, he'll release Maya. Give Joe $20 million in diamonds, proof of Joe's innocence in Donna's murder, and commit suicide. Joe learns that Cheney and his men are seeking revenge by attacking Marie. After racing to her house, he is captured by Cheney. Just as Cheney is about to cut and torture him, the stranger calls Cheney and offers to pay him for Joe's release. Cheney releases Joe and Marie. Using a music recognition app on her phone, Marie determines that the ringtone from the stranger's call is the theme from Evergreen Academy, which Joe had attended but is now closed and shuttered. Marie visits the school headmistress's home. Joe sneaks in the back door and finds his yearbook where he recognizes the student Adrian Doyle Price. Joe passes the name to Chucky, then hides Marie in a hotel for her safety. There they have passionate sex. Unaware that Adrian is watching through hidden cameras.
You can still do that?
What now?
After knowing the ending, you still do that?
I mean, I'm just at that time. It goes from a lot quickly, but whatever. Chucky does the same internet sleuthing and leaves a message for Joe, revealing that everything has been about Adrian's sister Amanda. Adrian intercepts and deletes the message before Joe hears it, and because Chucky insulted Adrian's sister, he garrotes Chucky to death with piano wire. Marie and Joe enter the Evergreen Academy grounds and find the school's records regarding Adrian and Amanda. Joe recalls bullying Amanda and seeing Amanda having sex with an older man, revealed to be her own father, yuck, in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
Adrian's father moved to the Price family to Luxembourg, where he later murdered his wife and Amanda, attempted to murder Adrian, and committed suicide. Back at the car, they find a package with Chucky's tongue inside, like you do. Joe makes Marie promise to let him go after Adrian alone. Joe goes to Adrian's penthouse, kills Young Bok by slitting her throat, and confronts Adrian. He then tells Adrian what he found out about Amanda and Adrian's father. Adrian congratulates him for answering the two questions correctly. Adrian, who has convinced himself that his father's abuse was an expression of love, blames the destruction of his family on Joe, who revealed their secret by telling everyone in Evergreen what he saw in the greenhouse. Adrian gives him the diamonds and evidence and escorts him to sets used to fabricate the media watched by Joe in the warehouse. Adrian taunts Joe by questioning why he was released at all. His tormentor shows that the interview with Maya was a setup. The girl, now a woman, was a paid actress. Adrian reveals that Marie is really Joe's own daughter, yuck, and that he wanted Joe to know what it felt like to lose everything. Adrian then commits suicide, shooting himself in the mouth. Horrified, as you would be, Joe writes Marie a letter saying they can never see each other again. He leaves her most of the diamonds, uses the rest to pay Cheney to return him to the captivity of the hotel room. All right, Jason, it's your show now. What do you want to know?
No, I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, I've said just about my piece on this. Okay. Watching, like I said, watching this, how many times did you cuss me? And especially after it end, how many times you said, I'm going to kill him?
I didn't. I honestly, I want you to hear me when I say this. You and several others that I do podcasts with. It's not about what we review. It's about the review. So you can make me watch any nonsense, and I'm not going to be upset with you. I'm only going to be upset if the conversation sucks or if you suck at the conversation. But I'll review any piece of shit. Jesus Christ.
Trust me, I know. I've been on. Me and you have a whole B real movie podcast.
Were you not there when we did the blaxploitation films and Santa Jaws and Velocipaster? I don't.
Hey, Velocipaster that's going to be on the Congress Library here soon. Crickets. Cricket. Don't do Mark. That was a grasshopper you put on screen.
Okay, Melissa, I'm really getting tired of that. She does the same damn thing to me. Fucking YouTube said it was a cricket. I'm going with cricket. Anyway, so to move this forward, I did not hate you for making me watch this. This is a deeply disturbing film. Incest is not pleasant. And certainly that Chinatown-esque, you don't realize you don't realize you've been in an incestual situation until after you've done it. Was deeply horrifying. I was thinking a lot about what Robert Winfrey was telling me about the Korean version versus the Spike Lee version and how Spike Lee doesn't seem to have understood it. The wiki was saying that there's a 140-minute cut of this movie that may have, I don't know at this point if it's been released or not. Josh Brolin thinks it's the better cut. Spike Lee, it's the cut that Spike Lee believes in and thinks is a better movie versus what the studio put out there. Interestingly enough, Spike Lee changed it from a Spike Lee joint to just a film by Spike Lee because he feels like his vision of what this should be was so brutally tampered with. So I don't know if it's that Spike Lee didn't get the source material or that this version doesn't really represent what his vision was. Either way, without having seen the Korean film, I'm kind of at a loss as to what the point of this film is other than to be disturbing for its own sake.
Revenge.
Which is mean, no. I understand what's happening in the movie. I'm saying, going back to Do the Right Thing for just a second. Do the Right Thing is talking about something, and I go over to Oldboy. I'm like, well, what is Oldboy trying to tell us? That
don't
if
fuck
you
your
fuck
kids.
with me, if you fuck with me, I'll kill you. All right, I there's plenty of that out there already. There's John Wick, for example.
Oldboy's new tagline: "Don't fuck your kids."
Yeah, put it right on the DVD box.
Yep.
So I think I might just be overthinking this. I might not be taking it, at its level, at its worth. And saying, is this more than just a revenge film? No, it's exactly what that is. It's just it's a gross, awful, twisty revenge film meant to wrench your soul, because you are made to feel bad for Elizabeth Olsen's character. You do see somewhat of a redemptive arc for Josh Brolin. After a time, he's able to withdraw from alcohol and get himself into shape, and then he is sent on this mission, and he's less a piece of shit than he was at the beginning of the movie. And so, hey, the hero's arc, only to see the whole thing crumble beneath his feet. And so, what a great tragedy Oldboy is, and as tragedies go, the film certainly works that way. Kind of like you with Do the Right Thing, this doesn't really appeal to me. I watched it; it was fine. Yes, film should make you feel something. It made me feel icky, so success there. But this was not for me. This was not something that I would necessarily gravitate towards of my own volition, outside of being a film reviewer and creating content for people's consumption.
Okay, I mean that's that we've covered everything in Oldboy.
Okay,
I mean the only thing that I want to say about this in closing is this movie is the epitome of convenience, because if he doesn't he has to meet Elizabeth Olsen, he has to go. He has to have the card.
It's
in his hand.
It's the Joker's plot in The Dark Knight. If things don't go exactly as they're supposed to go, you have no movie.
Is it Dark? Yeah, Dark Knight. I was going to say, also Killing Joke. If things don't play out exactly the same, if all these dominoes don't fall exactly right, everything goes to shit. So this movie is a matter of convenience, and that's one thing that I figured that I thought you would get a kick out of, is because of the level of how everything's got to fall in place. Oh yeah, I ate Chinese food, so I've got 46 hours to go through 30 Chinese restaurants eating egg rolls.
Yeah, I've got 46 hours to solve this escape room puzzle.
Yeah, and it all hinges on an egg roll.
Yeah.
It's just a level of convenience that plays out. And the fact, he becomes John Wick level expendable fighting style.
Yeah.
When only thing he's been watching is, Workout Takes by Fonda. But somehow he learns how to
Yes, he's able to fight off a mob of guys who are conveniently taking their turns attacking him instead of all jumping on him at once.
Right, and when we also realize that he is stab proof, he just has the knife lodged in his shoulder and just collapses and conveniently survives without massive blood loss.
Look,
stitches.
We were talking about Uncharted on Tuesday, and there's a scene where spoilers. There's a scene where Antonio Banderas gets his throat slit, and magically there's no blood. And you the Marvel movies where everyone, Black Widow can fall from orbit onto her head even, and she just kind of dusts herself off and does one of these and she's fine. I get it. In movies, nobody can get hurt unless they need to die. It didn't bother me, but it just looks stupid to me.
All right, so
dumb.
So, last words on Oldboy, or what?
Oh, I mean, I don't disagree with the critical consensus. This is not great. I think Josh Brolin's trying his level best, and Elizabeth Olsen is a competent actress, but I'd be curious to talk to a group of people who think this is awesome and find out why. Like what it is about this movie they like. I feel like this is one of those movies where all anyone remembers is him hitting the group of guys with a hammer. And it's like none of the movie resonated with them in any way. They've forgotten all this movie is that one scene, and for that reason they think it's awesome.
Yep, hammer time. That's it.
It's hammer time. All right, Jason, I'll tell you what, music is a big part of our life. I know that's true. And yes. I like Fight the Power by Public Enemy. I also like Beans and Cornbread, which is in the movie we're going to talk about next. Beans and Cornbread had a fight. Beans knocked Cornbread out of sight. Cornbread said, no, that's all right. Meet me on the corner tomorrow night. I'll be ready. I'll be ready tomorrow night. Beans and Cornbread.
Are you having a fucking stroke?
No, I'm talking about Beans and Cornbread.
Well, okay. Well, you and Beans and Cornbread sound like you're having a wonderful time.
We are having a wonderful time.
Well, where can I hear this Beans and Cornbread that you speak of?
In the Malcolm X movie, but also, really, did you not catch it in the barbershop scene?
Well, I caught the good segue that I gave you. You go in the Malcolm X movie. Instead of going right into the plug,
I'm gonna get there, but I'm more concerned with that. You just thought I just decided to start singing a dandy song and didn't know that was from the Malcolm X movie.
No, Mark, it's called. I was playing the straight man in this, and I was letting you go into the segue.
I don't think you understand the importance of Beans and Cornbread in my life. And I don't mean the food. I mean the song. I had the Malcolm X soundtrack when it came out. I was utterly obsessed with that Beans and Cornbread song. To this day, I'll be ready. I'll be ready tomorrow night.
Well,
Beans of Cornbread.
Well, you can go to... Where can you go download the Malcolm X soundtrack, Mark?
You can stream it, don't you understand, on Amazon Music Unlimited.com. And we just happen to have a link giving away a free trial of the Amazon Music Unlimited service at getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network. Again, it's getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network. A link is conveniently provided for you in the description of this podcast. You click it, you fill out the information, you agree to the 30 days, and you can download and stream the entire Malcolm X soundtrack featuring Beans and Cornbread. Beans knocked Cornbread out of sight. And that's what Beans said to Cornbread.
Let me guess.
I'm mad at you.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be the next Metal Hammer of Doom.
Yes.
I'm going to play I'm going to be like Radio Raheem and just play it 10 times in a row.
I want to see if there's a metal version that you can get on the show.
A metal version of Beans and Cornbread?
Yes.
There's a guy that does metal covers. His name is Leo, and he has an entire channel dedicated to covers that he does to advertise the studio that I guess he uses. He rents out to people. Yeah, I need him to do a metal cover of Beans and Cornbread.
Yes, tweet him to do a metal cover of Beans and Cornbread. Just for us. Here at W2M.
Yes. Get AmazonMusic.com/W2M Network for the Beans and Cornbread in your life. And that's what Beans said to Cornbread. All right. Before I lose Jason entirely, let's talk about Malcolm X. Malcolm X is a long movie.
Almost as long as this podcast.
No, it's not 3 hours long. Get the fuck out of here. Hang on, I gotta find the film now. All right, so Malcolm X came out in 1992. It's an epic biographical drama film about the life of a civil rights activist and Muslim Malcolm X. It was directed by Spike Lee. The screenplay was by Arnold Pearl and Spike Lee, and it's based on the autobiography of Malcolm X by Malcolm X and Alex Haley. It stars Denzel Washington as the aforementioned Malcolm X, Angela Bassett as Betty Shabazz, Albert Hall as Baines, Al Freeman Jr. as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam, Delroy Lindo as as a West Indian Archie, a Harlem gangster. Spike Lee plays Shorty. By the way, can we the next time you're in Florida and we're just walking around, can we do that walk? Can we do that spectacular walk?
The one where they've got the brim hats on and they're swinging their hand. Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that through City Walk.
Yes, please. I will buy the hats. I don't know if we can pull off the pinstripe suits, but
you buy the hats. We will have either Melissa or Amber video it, and we will do the walk right down City Walk.
Oh my God! The very first time I saw Malcolm X, this movie came out in 1992, so I'm in the middle of high school when this happens. Okay, 1992. I think I'm in like 10th grade, and I saw Malcolm X. I think in the theater. I loved this movie. I loved Spike Lee back then. Just everything about that man and his movies was my life. And I remember that scene where he gets the movie opens, I think, with his hair getting straightened.
And died, yeah.
And then he puts on his pinstripe pimp suit and his wide brimmed hat, and he meets up with Shorty, who he's emulating. He's his partner in crime, and he wants to be just like Shorty. And Shorty's played by Spike Lee. And they're like, "All right, let's show off our straight hair and our pinstripe suits. Let's get it done." And they start doing that walk, man. And I died, Jason Teasley. I just died. I'm like, if I live long enough to be able to walk down the street and sell that walk, that's my goal in life. It's amazing.
October 2022.
Okay, we're gonna pimp walk down City Walk. Anyway,
there we go.
Teresa Randall plays Laura. Kate Vernon is Sophia. Christopher Plummer is in here as Chaplain Gill. Giancarlo Esposito as Tamal's ex-hire. Let's see, Samuel Jackson in this one too. Nope, does not appear to be so. All right, so have you ever seen this one before?
Yes, this is one of my favorite Spike Lee movies. Okay. And what's funny about this, and it's something I told Amber, is if you say Malcolm X to me, I don't actually picture Malcolm X. I picture Denzel Washington as Malcolm X.
So real quick, Denzel Washington won the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Actor and was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. I will contend to this day, and I said it when we reviewed Training Day. This is the Oscar he should have won, not for Training Day. I think Training Day was like a makeup. Makeup for this. This is a Spider-Man not being nominated for Best Picture is not an Oscar snub. This is an Oscar snub.
Yes, very much so.
Denzel Washington's performance as Malcolm X is transformative. It is absolutely a revelation. Amazing.
And this is what actually made me a big Denzel fan. I mean, watching this movie. I mean, this two Denzel movies that like I absolutely, respect him and think he is a phenomenal actor. Came out of this and Reuben Carter when he portrayed Reuben Carter in The Hurricane.
Oh, that's another great movie, by the way.
Yes, those two portrayals. It's like cemented Denzel Washington in my top 3 favorite actors, and just about anything he's in, I will definitely at least give us a look at.
In 2010, the film was selected for preservation, much like Do the Right Thing, in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant.
Yes, so, and I can agree with that because this movie is very impactful.
Yeah.
It gives you an insight on, Malcolm X's life and his story. He wasn't always the quote unquote angry black man that everybody kind of associates with him and Martin Luther King being yin and yang of each other.
Well, what everyone remembers about Malcolm X is 2 things. It's chickens coming home to roost. That's always the thing that everyone says about Malcolm X. It's like he never said anything else in this world. And I think to a lesser extent, and maybe because of Public Enemy these days, is the too black, too strong speech. I don't remember if it's him or not. And again, I'm remembering this because it's a clip on a Public Enemy album. I don't remember if it was Malcolm X or somebody else who said that we have the best trained military, but the troops don't want to fight or something like that. In fact, they'd rather I can't remember the quote now, but it's like they'd rather stay home than go to war or something along those lines. Anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, what everyone knows about Malcolm X is addressed in the movie is his chickens coming home to roost thing, like in the wake of the JFK assassination. Look, man, I get his point, but bad timing.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest thing to say out in public at that particular time.
Yeah,
and Kennedy was beloved.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of people think that he is just this ultra violent black man, which yes, he did, speak about obtaining goals through violence. But
we were talking about bugging out and do the right thing. Again, he's a black nationalist. There was very much a thing of, we were brought here, we did not elect to come here, and we are owed an opportunity to create a world of our own in the United States. And that's a lot of what drives the civil rights movement, is this idea of, hey, we're here now, and we deserve an equal opportunity at the American dream as any other person that elected to come to this country or or was born here. And that's a lot of what Malcolm X is saying. He's also talking about institutional racism and the need to change that, in an era where black people are just getting rights, equal to the rest of the country. In an era where I think women hadn't even, had the right to vote just yet. So there's a lot going on here. And Malcolm X is always viewed against Martin Luther King. And the elementary school story, if you were even taught this, is like, oh, Martin Luther King was the good, peaceful one. Malcolm X was the angry, violent one. And it's like, well, neither one of them.
Pump your brakes.
Yeah, neither one of them was perfect, and both of them would have preferred there not be, at the end of the day, not be violence. I think the difference was Malcolm X was like, if violence is if violence is the last resort and the only way, then violence is what it'll be. But we have to get there first. It's not going to be step 1 violence, step 3 profit. So
right,
which is I think a fundamental misunderstanding of Malcolm X. But let's get into it. It won a shit ton of awards, was nominated for a bunch others. It's got an 88 rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.5 out of 10. The consensus is anchored by a powerful performance by Denzel Washington. Spike Lee's biopic of the legendary civil rights leader brings his autobiography to life with an epic sweep and a nuanced message. I'll get to it when we get into the critical review, but when he has that sort of come to Allah part of his life when he goes on the pilgrimage to Mecca, that's like one of my favorite parts of this movie. The real is, it's kind of like Pryor when he talks about his revelation from what he perceived to be God about the use of racial slurs and communicating with others, and feeling like, maybe I've been thinking about this all wrong. It was one of those moments where you just like, you look back on your life, and the choices that you made, and you go, maybe I didn't have all the answers I thought I did. Maybe I've been doing some things wrong, and I need to make some changes. It's redemption, second chances, epiphanies, things of that nature really appeal to me. And in Malcolm X's story, just like Richard Pryor's and many others, that's what resonates with me about this film. So let's talk about it. Malcolm Little is raised in a poor household in rural Michigan by his Caribbean mother and African-American father. When Malcolm is a young boy, their house is burnt down and his father, an activist for black rights, is killed by a chapter of the Black Legion. His death is registered as a suicide and the family receives no compensation. Malcolm's mother's mental state deteriorates and she's admitted to a mental institution. Malcolm and his siblings are put into protective care. Malcolm performs well in school and dreams of being a lawyer, but his teacher discourages it due to his skin color. In 1944, Malcolm, now a teenager, lives in Boston. One night, he catches the attention of white Sophia, and the two begin dating. Malcolm travels to Harlem with Sophia, where he meets West Indian Archie, a gangster who runs a local numbers gang, at a bar. The two become friends and start cooperating in an illegal numbers racket. One night at a club, Malcolm claims to have bet on a winning number. Archie disputes this, denying him large sums of money. A conflict ensues between the two, and Malcolm returns to Boston after an attempt on his life. Malcolm, Sophia, Malcolm's friend Shorty, and a woman named Peg decide to perform robberies to earn money. All right, we're going to rob this town blind, you hear? By 1946, the group has accrued a large amount of money from thievery. However, they are later arrested. The two girls are sentenced to 2 years as first offenders in connection with the robberies, while Malcolm and Shorty are sentenced to 8 to 10 years in jail. While incarcerated, Malcolm meets Baines, a member of the Nation of Islam, who directs him to the teachings of the group's leaders, Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm grows interested in the Muslim religion and lifestyle promoted by the group and begins to resent white people for mistreating his race like you would. Malcolm is paroled from prison in 1952 after serving 6 years and travels to the Nation of Islam's headquarters in Chicago. There he meets Muhammad, who instructs Malcolm to replace his surname with Little with X, which symbolizes his lost African surname that was taken from him by white people. He is rechristened as Malcom X. Malcolm returns to Harlem and begins to preach the nation's message. Over time, his speeches gather large crowds of onlookers. Malcolm proposes ideas such as African-American separation from white Americans. In 1958, Malcolm meets Nurse Betty Sanders. The two begin dating, quickly marry, and become parents of 4 daughters. Several years later, Malcolm is now in a high position as the spokesperson of the Nation of Islam. During this time, Malcolm learns that Muhammad had fathered numerous children out of wedlock, contradicting his teachings and Islam. After President John F. Kennedy is assassinated in November of 1963, Malcolm comments that the assassination was a product of the white violence that has been prevalent in America since its founding, comparing the killing to the chickens coming home to roost. This statement does not go well, damages Malcolm's reputation, and Muhammad suspends him from speaking to the press or at temples for 90 days. In early 1964, Malcolm goes on a pilgrimage to Mecca, where he meets Muslims from all races, including white. Malcolm, having lost his faith in the nation, publicly announces that his founding of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which teaches tolerance instead of racial separation. He is exiled from the nation, and his house is firebombed in 1965. On February 21st, 1965, Malcolm prepares to speak before a crowd at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, but tragically, disciples of the Nation of Islam shoot him several times. One of Malcolm's bodyguards shoots one of the shooters, Thomas Hagen, in the leg before a furious crowd beats Hagen. Malcolm is transported to a hospital but is pronounced dead on arrival. The film concludes with several clips showing the aftermath of Malcolm's death. Martin Luther King delivers a eulogy to Malcolm, and Ozzie Davis recites a speech at Malcolm's funeral. Nelson Mandela delivers a speech to a school, quoting an excerpt from one of Malcolm's speeches, and everyone says, "I'm Spartacus." All right. So I love this movie. It is about it is 201 minutes. Yeah, this is 3 hours and 20 minutes long. I'm gonna go ahead and make a bold statement. This probably didn't need to be 3 hours. There is, I think, more than half of the movie that just deals with his coming up through crime and whatnot, which you can touch on. You did not need to go as in depth as they did. You would be convinced that this was like what is it? Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy. By the time they actually
get movie,
it is a good movie. But it's a whole other movie. It's the problem.
Shot my pinky toe off.
My point is, and I'll let you get in with this. My only big criticism of this movie, while I understand the nature to create a sweeping epic, you don't need it. You don't need that much level of detail to get an idea that Malcolm X had it rough and that he might harbor some resentments of white people and the institutions in America that are inherently biased. I didn't need the inner workings of the numbers game. Like, Spike Lee gets a little too in his direction at times, gets a little too lost in the minutia, and sometimes loses focus of what the story is he's trying to tell. This is about Malcolm X, the leader of the Nation of Islam. We don't need that much backstory.
Okay, so touching on Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing did not give, it lacked in a lot of points of exposition.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X did not. Malcolm X went overboard over the minute details. And I'm fully on board. About 45 minutes of this movie could have been cut out.
Yeah.
It really did feel like two separate movies. And it really takes you out of it. So I watched this in sections. I watched this, because it is such a hard movie to get through in one sitting, unless you've got like an entire afternoon clear. So yeah, I watched this in sections, and each time I came back to it, it felt like I was watching another movie.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like really disjointed. It was just a lot of filler and a lot of minute details that could have been glossed over, and that's why I was really surprised. In the comparison of Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing had a lot of details that were omitted. Malcolm X, like I said, not so much. I mean, I think it was a statement film, I guess you could say.
Sure.
To an
I think
not so much statement of Malcolm X. I think it was a statement for Spike Lee to show, look, I can do this. I want the respect. I want the respect of the black community to show a predominant black figure.
Well, I think it's I can make high art that should win an Oscar, and I do think that there was an inherent bias against someone like Spike Lee. Spike Lee brings up icky subjects for people who think they're better than all of this, and there's Spike Lee going, nope. I mean, there's a great line in this where there's a white woman who says, "Is there anything I can do to help?" And he says, basically, and he goes, "No," but the subtext of that is, "No, there's nothing you can do because you're white," which is a line I've heard in my own personal life. There's nothing any white person can do to help black people. The only thing that would help is to stay out of the way. And, and there is a deep-seated sense of there can be no harmony between the races. There can only be separation. I have said this before. This is not a black thing. There are plenty of white people who feel this way too. There is very much a desire to go back to separate but equal. And if we can make separate but equal work, that would be a lot of people's preferred way of
cohabitation.
Of constructing the culture here in America, at least the very least in America. I can't speak for anywhere else. There are definitely a lot of people across the United States that are like, yeah, separate but equal is the way I want to go. The problem is, even when we tried that, when white people got jealous of what was going on with black people, they firebombed their neighborhoods. But hey, we'll talk about the Tulsa race riots on another race riots. I gotta go to bed. I'm starting.
Wascally Wabbit. Okay.
Yeah, I'm starting to slur and whatnot.
Yeah. I'm fighting the Sandman over here.
So we'll wrap up because we've been at this for almost an hour and a half, and this is supposed to be a 60-minute podcast. Just to sum up, I think you get a good sense, and I think you get a fair sense of who Malcolm X was by the end of his life. I think Spike Lee does a really good job of explaining to people that Malcolm X was not all bad, and that Malcolm X was a useful person in the civil rights movement, and that he, in a lot of ways, should be regarded as a hero, at the very least, to the black community, and not a scary boogeyman to the white community. I think that's all. I think that's all effective. I do think that Spike Lee got. I think in his head, he thought the mission statement was that if I can produce something in over 3-hour epic scale of this man's life, that I will be seen for a wonderful director and be rewarded accordingly. And I don't know how much he looked at the film and said, how much of this film do I really need to put out there in the world? How much of this really needs to be filmed? Right. I think if you can get him to prison in the first 30 minutes of that movie, the rest of it you can leave largely intact and it'd be fine. That I think it's like a whole hour of him, the stuff that happens as him as a child and then him as a young adult before he goes to prison. And it's like, as I said at the beginning, it's utterly unnecessary. It doesn't. The stuff that happens to his family informs his feelings about white people. The stuff happening to him as a criminal is the result of that. It doesn't really inform his beliefs later on as he's a member of the Nation of Islam that I could see. I don't know why it's in the movie. I think it's distracting at the very least. I'll give you the last word here, but before I do, looking back over Spike Lee's filmography, there's so many more of these that I could do another set of 3 of these. I would love to talk about Bamboozled. I could spend an hour on Bamboozled. I have not yet seen Da 5 Bloods. It's something I want to see. There's a whole bunch of Spike Lee movies out there that I would love to sit and talk about, and I could spend hours doing so. I genuinely enjoy him as a director. Nobody is perfect. Kenneth Branagh, who's directing the leader for Best Picture this year, Belfast, not a perfect movie. Kenneth Branagh, not a perfect director. And he's also critically acclaimed. So it's not like these people are 100% good, but they're more good than bad. And I could spend hours and hours and hours on his filmography. I genuinely, I know I in devising this list of Black History Month podcasts, I was being a little cheeky, but I genuinely think this deserved a lengthy discussion of what informs Spike Lee, what kind of director is Spike Lee, and what is his value in the culture. So I will be revisiting Spike Lee's filmography again in the future at some point, and I'll give you the final word here.
Yeah, I mean, Malcolm X is the pinnacle of Spike Lee's career, in my opinion. Do the Right Thing was the launching pad. Spike Lee's the pinnacle. Oldboy is one of the swing and misses due to not understanding the source material and what was meant to be said. And that's why I like the variety we took with these three movies. Now, like I said, I mean, there's nothing really bad to say about this except the runtime and the pandering and the filler. That's the only downside of this. If you really want to understand a lot of the civil rights movement and a lot of stuff that happened in the civil rights movement that is not in your history books, because history is written by those who won, this is a good movie to educate yourself with and not take it as 100% truth, but a good glimpse behind the curtain of the civil rights movement.
All right. Well, speaking of Black History Month podcast, Jason and I reviewed some blaxploitation from the early 70s with Pam Grier's Coffee, Superfly, and Blackula. We reviewed the modern Shaft movies with Samuel L. Jackson, Shaft and Shaft 2000. There's also a re-airing of the Shaft movies with Richard Roundtree, the 3 Shaft movies from the 70s that I did years ago with Sean Comer and Pat Mullen, which I forgot he was on that podcast and did not credit him appropriately. But yes, Pat Mullen was on that podcast too. We've got a re-airing of The Wire as part of our Black History celebration. And then, whether Jason would like to admit it or not, he chose the next 2 out of 3 movies.
I chose
for
one.
You chose 3. You chose 2. You chose 2. And that is our finale for Black History Month. And that is going to be Pootie Tang, The Ladies' Man, starring SNL alumnus Who's-he, what's-he?
You asked me too fast.
The fuck's his name?
Yeah.
You know that guy.
Ah, shit. I know. I want to say Leon Little. I don't know where I'm pulling that name from.
We're both so tired.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me get the Cavassier and a fish sandwich.
Do I have to look this up?
I'm looking it up now. Tim Meadows.
Dang,
wow.
God damn.
Yeah.
Tim Meadows,
Yeah.
yes.
We got there eventually.
Pootie Tang with Chris Rock, The Ladies' Man with Tim Meadows. And because Jason's putting me through this, I had to get back at him. So we're going to do Soul Plane, starring Snoop Dogg and Kevin Hart, I believe. And Monique. It's going to be fantastic. And Tom Arnold. Soul Plane is truly atrocious. It's
token white guy.
Yeah.
Dig it.
Soul Plane is truly a train wreck. It is amazing. It's just, I went out of my way to go see this movie, so I'm looking forward to laughing at it with you.
Good. I'm looking forward to watching it too. Maybe.
In the meantime, we reviewed Uncharted, The Book of Boba Fett. We just reviewed Amorphous, Halo, the new album by Finnish heavy metal band Amorphous. Tomorrow, Alexis Hano will be providing a lecture that I'll be attending on the history of animation and something about the first season of Cuphead. And then Jason and I and Alexis will all be back tomorrow evening to review the best TV show I've seen in quite some time, the best written TV show I have seen in quite some time that isn't tremendously political or having to do with drugs directly. And that is John Cena and James Gunn's Peacemaker on HBO Max. So that's what's going on tomorrow. Saturday, we've got two Everyone Loves a Bad Guy airings coming up. I told you about The Wire. The other one is Batman Rogues Gallery. And then we kick off Batman week in earnest. Sunday the 27th, we will have a re-airing of Batman Hush. I was
on that show, I think.
I believe you were. We will have a new source material. This time it'll be Batman White Knight with Jesse Starcher and Evan Bevins. A re-airing of Batman The Burton Years with Michael Keaton. A re-airing of the Dark Knight trilogy from Christopher Nolan, a re-airing of the Dark Knight animated movies, a re-airing of Gotham by Gaslight, the animated movie, source material, Batman Haunted Night, also the Long Road to Ruin for Batman the Animated Series, Volume 1.
Phenomenal series.
And then on Saturday, March 5th, the source material we did for Gotham by Gaslight, plus trivia. We'll have Jesse Starcher and Alexis Hannah will be hosting a trivia concerning the Batman through the years in comics and movies and TV shows. And then just before we review the Batman, we will also be re-airing our Batman Hellboy Starman review, plus Joker 2019 and Joker by Brian Azzarello from 2008. And then finally, we will be actually reviewing the Batman starring James Pattinson on March 8th.
Or even Robert Pattinson.
That's what I said.
No, you said James.
Either one.
Go to bed, Mark.
Yes, sir. All right. You want to go ahead and plug your fantasy football podcast real quick?
Yeah, you can catch me and Ty Louder over on the Second and Short podcast. We're going through our division buy, sell, keep, cut, love, have dinner with, have a hoagie down on Fifth Avenue with.
AFC East, you pray love.
Yeah, this time our newest episode will be dropping. It dropped today on YouTube, actually. Was the AFC South. Really interesting conversation in that one. It was typically not one of our episodes we agree a lot on. We did have a little debate toward the end. So definitely go check that out. Go check out Ty on Love War Challenge podcast that he does. So yeah, and you could listen to the audio if you're part of the W2M network and have subscribed to them. Definitely check us out there when the audio goes up then.
It'll be up sometime either tomorrow or definitely by Friday.
Well,
right,
it would be today.
Yes.
Because it's on 1 a.m.
All right, folks. Thank you for joining us on this triple feature focusing on the acclaimed director Spike Lee. For Jason Teasley, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.